Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Well, hello and welcome to this week's Sunday Conversation right here on Big Country Politics. I am Manny Diaz. This week we are joined by a McMurray grad, a 2017 McMurray grad, also played on the McMurray Warhawk basketball team, Thierry Tchenko. He is right now, he's currently running for U.S. Senate, the U.S. Senator seat, looking to challenge Ted Cruz. Terry, thank you so much. This is kind of like a homecoming for you.
It is. Thanks for having me, man. It's good to be back in Abilene.
You bet, man. Well, you're up against some big heavy hitters. You know, Colin Allred, and certainly a Texas senator that's already kind of established himself, Roland Gutierrez. Tell me, what has been your why when it comes to putting your name in the hat here?
Yeah. Texans aren't getting their needs met by everyday politicians. We have a ton of problems in this state, and we need someone in Washington who's going to be looking out for everyday Texans. And when you think about Colin and Roland, they've been in office, but what have they done to make the lives of people better? And that's an important question that we have to answer. And don't take my word for it. You can look at their record and see what they've done. And it's not good enough. And so for me, all my career, whether I've been an organizer or a nonprofit executive providing home repairs to seniors, vets, and low-income families, I've delivered, and I plan on doing that in the Senate.
Was there something that kind of just really struck you? You know, obviously you're a relatively young guy. These guys are kind of a little bit more established, having been in the circus, if you will. Was there something that really struck you when it came to this?
Yeah, in November of 2022, after the midterm elections, I got very frustrated with what I felt like was a disconnect between the issues that everyday folks are dealing with and what I was seeing in the media from politicians. So I decided on starting a series called Talking Texas, where I would travel the state and just talk to folks on the ground and highlight their perspectives. And I would ask them four main questions. What do you do? Where are you from? What issues do you care about? And what keeps you up late at night? As I was traveling the state, and I was in the Valley, I was in Central Texas, urban, rural, we went all over. We recorded about 11 episodes. And there were two things that were clear. One, that there's a true disconnect, that Texans are not getting their needs served. But also, there was a conviction that I started feeling for the race. So I took some time, prayed about it, fasted, talked to my wife, and I decided that I needed to get in this race.
Well, although Robert Francis O'Rourke heavily challenged Ted Cruz in the last election for the Senate seat, Texas has been known to be very red. Is there enough hue to turn Texas purple or perhaps blue when it comes to this particular Senate race?
There's a huge opportunity. Texans are really frustrated as we've been traveling the state. I mean, just this week alone, I was in Rains County, was in Bowie County in East Texas, ended up coming back here, was in Lubbock and San Angelo. I'm hearing the same thing. People are frustrated and they want a new way forward. And that's what we're creating. That's really going to be focused on serving everyday Texans.
What would you say is the biggest thing that you're hearing on the campaign trail, you know, from these people that makes them frustrated?
Yeah. Folks are talking a lot about inflation and not being able to make enough money to really be able to take care of basic responsibilities like paying rent or their mortgage. And when you think about it, in Luders, Texas, which is 30 minutes north of Abilene, the average median income is $29,000 a year. So you're not even giving people a chance at being able to take care of their families. And we need a new way forward. We need someone in Washington that's going to be thinking about the people in Luders or in Putnam. And that's what I plan on doing.
You know, school vouchers has also been kind of a big thing. You know, Ted Cruz has kind of, you know, suggested that he's in favor of that. You have kind of challenged him on X, Twitter, whatever they're calling it these days. Tell me about what you would like to see done about that whole thing there.
Yeah, we have to fund our public schools, and that has to be a priority. And even though, you know, public school funding is primarily a state issue, there's work that we can do on a federal level to bring down dollars to underserved school districts. School districts like Abilene ISD, where you have about 7,000 kids that benefit from Title I funding. That's something that our work to do is making sure that we're bringing as many dollars down to serve our kids, because school vouchers, it's not just an education issue, it's an anti-rural issue. And that's what Ted Cruz wants to bring forward, which is just to serve his corporate donors. And again, we need someone that's serving everyday Texans and not looking to their donors.
All righty. Thierry Tchenko, he is a candidate for U.S. Senate challenging Ted Cruz, Republican Ted Cruz. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, more with Thierry on some of the big issues that Texans are looking to have resolved heading into next November. That and more coming up on Big Country Politics.
Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Well, welcome back to Big Country Politics. This is our Sunday conversation. This week we're joined by Thierry Tchenko, McMurray grad, former McMurray basketball player. He's also running for the U.S. Senate seat challenging Ted Cruz. Thierry, we talked about a lot of different things. Your why. Why you're running for U.S. Senate. Let's kind of shift gears and let's talk about some other things that are really, it affects everyday Americans, it affects everyday Texans, and certainly here in the southwest region of the country, the border. Yeah. Immigration is a major, major thing right now, and we're seeing just record after record just being broken, certainly as we head into the cooler months of the year. Tell me, you said in a tweet that we really need to address these certain things when it comes to that there really is no legislation to address immigration. We see a lot of politicians come through here on this program, and they'll talk about, say, how bad things are, how bad of a job Joe Biden is doing. If you were to take this seat, what would you do different? What would be your plan of attack?
Yeah, I think a United States Senator from Texas has to be leading the way on the issue. And when we usually have that conversation about immigration, we either talk about it from the standpoint of border security or of valuing migrants. I believe we can do both. And more specifically, from a valuing migrant standpoint, for folks that are coming, leaving horrible conditions, we can have a pathway to citizenship and allow them to help our Texas economy, especially with the labor shortage. Being able to think about ways of being able to implement a real guest worker program so that folks that want to come and help our agriculture or manufacturing industries can come on a seasonal basis, make their wages, and then be able to go back. But then also from a border security standpoint, being able to look at our technology on the border and say we can upgrade our sensors, we can upgrade our cameras, and then also hiring more immigration judges. Right now we have a 2.1 million case backlog in our immigration system, but we only have 650 immigration judges. It's going to take a long time to get through that backlog with only 650 immigration judges. So for me, it's doing both. Being able to have safe borders and also valuing migrants. And this is actually one of the critiques that I have of Colin Allred and Roland Gutierrez, because on this campaign, we'll talk a lot about immigration, but what have they done? What is the bill that they've produced? Especially with Colin, he's in Congress, about 25% of Dallas is an immigrant population. Well, you need to be able to be a leader on the issue and introduce a bill on immigration. And with Roland, immigration is primarily a federal issue. But the moment that Greg Abbott made it a state issue, Roland should have made it a state issue as well. But that's what everyday politicians do. They talk a lot on the campaign trail, but then get in office and don't lead. And we plan on leading in Washington.
Another big issue that's looking to be tackled, certainly following Roe versus Wade, the overturning of that, is abortion. Senator Lindsey Graham, the senator from South Carolina, is calling for a national minimum standard for abortion. Colleagues on the other side of the aisle, may not agree with that whole thing. Well, what is your stance when it comes to that whole this dilemma here?
We need a new way forward on the issue. For far too long, for about 50 years, we've been in gridlock where you have both sides that are not actually coming together and having a real conversation on abortion. We have to be able to protect our vulnerable women, make sure that we're holding men accountable as well, and having support systems in place in our communities so that women are able to have that support that they need in order to be able to have good situations. Whenever you have the average median income in Texas for women at $25,000 a year, you're not giving people much. You're not giving women much. And for Black and brown women, it's even lower. It's at $21,000 a year. And so data shows that women that have abortions, they said the number one reason that they're having an abortion is because of financial issues. And the second reason is because of a lack of a support system. We need government leaders that are stepping up to the plate and actually working to help the lives of women across the state.
What would you suggest to that? Is it higher wages or better programs, or what would be your solution to that?
Absolutely. So I'm an advocate for $15 minimum wage, being able to increase that minimum wage for families across the state. It's also going into communities and being able to put resource centers so that women are able to go there, especially single mothers that don't have the support system within their family, to be able to go and get the resources that they need from a work standpoint or healthcare standpoint. That's what we need in this state. And healthcare is another big issue. 20% of our state doesn't have health insurance. That's the highest rate in the country. We need someone that's introducing a bill to make sure that every single person in this state has affordable and accessible health insurance. And that's something that I'm hearing all over the state as I travel, in urban parts like Houston and Dallas, but also when I go and talk to cotton farmers in Meadow. Right. We need someone stepping up and being a leader, and that's what I plan on being. You
mentioned, an increase in minimum wage. How would you find the means to do that?
Yeah. I think Florida is a good example. Florida was able to increase their minimum wage and scale it. And data shows that inflation was not heavily affected by that increase in minimum wage. And Florida doesn't have a Democratic governor. I think we know that Ron DeSantis is probably the complete opposite.
The polar opposite.
That's right. So there's opportunity of being able to do that on a federal level because we haven't made an adjustment to our minimum wage since 2009. And so with inflation, with cost of living adjustments, it's important for us to be able to raise that baseline because for many people in our state that work in corporate roles, they're able to get a cost of living adjustment. But why is it that essential workers aren't able to get that same cost of living adjustment? That's not right. And so for me, I plan on introducing a $15 minimum wage for families in Texas.
Term limits has been something that Senator Ted Cruz has kicked around. I know since we've seen a lot of involving, Mitch McConnell, Joe Biden even. Term limits, is that something that we should really kind of consider, certainly as we move forward with the maturity of some of these lawmakers in D.C.?
I think it's something that I'd be open to supporting. I think being able to make sure that we have the right folks in office is important. And that's really the priority for me more than term limits. It's making sure that we're electing people that are going to lead, that are going to be looking out for everyday people like us. That to me is a priority. Now, term limits is a conversation that I'm open to having. But I think that the reason why those conversations come up is because people are dissatisfied with the folks that are representing them. And that's more of a people issue than it is a system issue. If we elect good people that are working for everyday folks, then I think you'll hear less conversations about term limits.
Last thing, we're seeing, a dress code being kind of modified within the Senate, and it's kind of really centric around, Senator John Fetterman, a senator from Pennsylvania. You are running for this particular seat. Do you agree with the dress code change?
Yeah. I'm less concerned about a dress code change and more concerned about making sure that we have leaders that are introducing legislation, co-sponsoring legislation to make the lives of people in the state better. I think a lot of times we like to focus on the exterior, and not saying that it's insignificant, but the priority and the focus should always be on what are you doing to make the lives of people better. And so when we have these conversations about dress code or about the way that people are acting in certain ways, to me it's not a productive conversation. Our focus should be on policy. What are our leaders doing? Because I can dress up in a suit and tie every day, but that doesn't mean that I'm working for the people of Texas. And so the priority should be the work. What are you doing to get the job done to make sure that our state is in a better position?
Terry, thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
All righty. Thierry Tchenko, he's running for U.S. Senate, challenging Senator Ted Cruz. For Thierry Tchenko, I'm Manny Diaz. This has been another Sunday Conversation right here on Big Country Politics. We'll see you next week.